Sex and power. Sex and power.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sex and Power podcast. Real talk at the intersections of sex, power, oppression, and liberation. I'm your host, Janice Selby. Clara Ritger spent her 20s building a successful media career, producing for U.S. national media such as NBC, WSJ, and TLC, while secretly battling chronic illness and burnout. At 24, her appendix ruptured, requiring open abdominal surgery that involved an intestinal resection from which she never fully healed. Clara struggled for 6 years in and out of doctors' offices getting additional procedures and surgeries, in the midst of which she was then diagnosed with skin cancer that required another surgery. This led Clara to give up everything so that she could travel the world before she died. In this episode of Sex and Power, Clara shares how she burned it all down, why rest and healing are radical acts, and what she's learned about choosing alignment over performance. Welcome, Clara Ritger. I feel so lucky to have you join me today.
Thank you for having me. Wow, it's hard almost to hear that back because it brings back the memories of those times. So, yeah.
You've been through a lot.
Yes. Yes. I had a very challenging 20s. I think the joke that some people have made is that I had lived sort of 30 or 40 years in about 10. So I've had a lot of life experiences that, and it's funny, actually, my parents commented this a couple of weeks ago to me that these experiences, I think, have given me a lot of wisdom that is unusual for somebody who is my age. I'm 34.
Yeah, I agree with your parents, and that's why I think I maybe ran across you on Threads, and you said something about your experience, and I was blown away that you had such incredible and terrifying and eye-opening experiences in your 20s. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because it is so unusual and it absolutely changes your paradigm, gives you a massive shift as you figure out what's really important in life versus what we were taught was important, or what we believed was important. No one in their 20s thinks that they're going to be sidelined with health issues. I mean, you're invincible in your 20s. It's not usually till your 50s that things start falling apart. But for you, it was a few decades sooner. So will you tell us a little bit about that journey? I know I just said some of what happened, but what was it like for you initially getting to that point where you recognized things had to change? And this can also have to do with burnout as a cultural epidemic, because that's also kind of an area that you specialize in.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head that most people don't really go through this sort of reckoning about what really matters in life until much later. You might go through it in your 30s, but I think most people, go through it in their 40s, late 40s, early 50s, where it's almost this midlife, what we've titled a midlife crisis, right? But the midlife crisis is actually sort of the awakening to death, is the way that I look at it. It's the moment that all of a sudden your parents start hitting that age where maybe one or both of them has passed away or they're getting sick. And then you're finally seeing yourself as a mortal being and starting to question, am I living the life that I want? And are there changes that I want to make the most of the time that I have left? And so,
and you were super successful.
I was.
Yes.
I was. I had hit. Yes. I had always been that sort of, right. I was the salutatorian graduating from high school. I went to a very famous school in the United States, the University of Notre Dame, on full scholarship. I graduated cum laude. I was always a straight A, good student. overachiever. I got a job as a reporter on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., like right out of college. So it was like I was hitting things that people, dreamed of. But that's sort of the gift of health issues, is that they offer that opportunity for that clarity, because you all of a sudden become very acquainted with the possibility of death. And so it's interesting because I think wrapped up in this reckoning with my health was also this reckoning with identity. I think I started to realize that I wasn't being fulfilled, hitting all of these milestones that I was told were maybe going to fulfill me. And before my appendix ruptured and I started to struggle with these health issues, I think those questions were already creeping in. I was, working as a journalist. I was working around the clock. I was barely making any money. And I was looking up a ladder that I didn't want to climb because everybody above me seemed miserable. And so then, a year or two later, when my appendix ruptures, I'm then starting to struggle with, like, who am I? What do I actually want? And, why are maybe some of the relationships not fulfilling me, not, meeting my needs? And what are my needs even? I think as women, we're really socialized to put everyone else before ourselves. And so I was starting to realize that the way that I was existing, the way that I was showing up, clearly wasn't serving me, because I was now in the hospital and sick. But I didn't even know where to begin to rebuild myself and how to be in the world in a way that didn't kill me. And I think that was really the question that persisted for the next 6 years while I continued to struggle with health. And that was ultimately the question that led me to burn it all down and travel the world, was this realization that I needed to figure out a way to live and work in a way that didn't kill me.
Wow. That is just so powerful, because in North America, we've been raised in such a capitalist mindset with a narrow view of success. Success has to be financial. Excuse me just one moment.
Yes. And part of the problem with that model of success is that we have made ourselves bodies of work. And now that we're seeing the AI revolution, it's like we've prioritized KPIs, right? Performance over purpose. And so you've now got, well, machines can perform. So what are you as a human left with? Right. And I think that that's the reckoning of, gosh, what if even is my purpose in life? Like, why am I here? Like, is starting to come to the forefront of the conversation.
Wow. These really are the big questions that people often don't reckon with until they hit midlife. So often someone might be an empty nester. The kids are gone, and they look around, they see then it's just them and this person that they married when they were in their early 20s. For a lot of folks who listen to my other podcast, Divorcing Religion, the reckoning also has to do with losing a sense of religious purpose. And that was something that was kind of spoon-fed to them. And then when that purpose no longer exists because they no longer hold the same beliefs that they did. Oh my gosh, existential questioning, existential angst, sometimes existential depression, which is quite serious. And I mean, for you, it was on top of a ruptured appendix is very serious. It can be deadly for people who don't know. So I'm so glad they figured out what was going wrong for you. But then, a resection is also very, very significant. And then you're dealing with it all in and out, doctors, hospitals. Your career must have been somehow put on hold at the time, or were you still managing to like go to work?
Yeah, I was still pushing my body to perform is the best like way that I can say it. So I moved eventually from Washington, D.C. to New York City, and New York City is an expensive place to live. I was freelancing for most of the time that I was in New York City. And so if work came, I was taking on that work. Overwork was a survival mode, as it is for many people. I think overwork doesn't necessarily mean that you have trauma, but I think that it is a little bit of an indicator of it. And the reason being is that when you're overworking, you believe that a normal amount of work is not enough. You've convinced yourself somehow that you are not enough, or that the money that you're bringing in is not enough. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that sometimes it actually isn't enough, that in this day and age, wages have not kept up with the cost of living. And so there very much is that economic reality that depending on what you're able to bring in an 8-hour day, you may actually, and wherever you're living in the world, you may actually have to have a side hustle or a second job to be able to meet those financial needs. But
yeah, and the health stuff too, like the health insurance, which in Canada we take it for granted. If you get sick, you're going to go to the hospital. It's not going to bankrupt you. Oh my gosh, for you folks in the United States, I do not understand your healthcare system, and it's so expensive and really can be deadly then for folks who don't make enough money.
absolutely. And I was spending thousands of dollars a year in the medical system to get these tests and procedures that just weren't covered by insurance, or they were, but they weren't covered for my age range. So it's like I was having issues that with my body that people only have much later in life, if that makes sense. And that's why I felt like I was on this accelerated timeline to death. And ultimately why I was like, well, I need to take my retirement now because I'm never going to actually live to see it.
Wow.
But my experience was that not only was I working too many hours, but it was the way in which I was showing up to work. And I think this is the thing that can be really transformative for people, because what you might not be able to change is the number of hours that you have to work. But what you can change is how the work feels in your body. And that's nervous system dysregulation, right? That's the trauma piece that I was carrying with me. That was the reason why I needed to leave and heal, because I was showing up constantly in this fight or flight mode. And when you are stressed, when your body is pumping these stress hormones through your system and your blood pressure increases, your heart rate increases, your body is doing those things because it's trying to ready you for the fight. It's trying to keep you alive in a situation where it thinks you're going to die. The problem is that you're not going to die for the most part every second of the day. And so that activated state in your body is actually wearing down your systems. And so that's ultimately, the doctors couldn't figure it out. I figured it out after I was traveling the world and resting, but that's ultimately why I wasn't healing, because when you're in a state of fight or flight, what are you not in? Rest and digest mode. And all of my issues, or the majority of my issues, were related to my gastrointestinal system.
Wow. The things that you're saying ring so true. And when I'm working with my clients, I tell them it's like the smoke detector, the smoke alarm is going off in your body, but you don't know whether it's telling you the toast is burned or the house is on fire. And one of those is a lot more serious than the other. But if your alarm is going off constantly all the time, you're constantly activated. And that, you're right, that then we're not getting the rest that we need. So you had lots of things going on, and then you came to a point where you decided for yourself, because your health situation seemed so dire, you literally thought you might not be around to retire and see the world later, you better act on it now. Did you have the support of your loved ones in making that decision, like friends and family? Were they looking at you going, oh my God, yeah, the end is coming for you, girl. You better get out there and do whatever you want to do? Or were they saying, look, you paid all this money you went to school, you did all these things to build your career. What if you leave and then you come back and nobody hires you back? What was going on there?
I would say that those were conversations and concerns and worries that I was having with myself more so than my community was having with me, if that makes sense. To be honest, I don't think I would have taken the leap had things not gotten so bad. And that's a lot of why I, want to share this with people now, because a McKinsey global survey in 2023, 2 years ago, found that 1 in 4 people globally report feelings of burnout. The thing is that burnout isn't, like you were saying, that sort of initial warning bell. Burnout is like, mayday, mayday, all systems are like, you're too far gone. You've ignored all the signals of your body saying that it needs rest or needs, to rethink the way that you're showing up in relationships, whether that's family or romantic or work relationships. Like, burnout is you've already burned the candle out, right? And you have to now figure out how to reignite your light. And ultimately, I think that there were things that I could have done that would have prevented me from having to burn it all to the ground, if that makes sense. There were signals and changes that I could have made in my life, small changes, before it sort of snowballed into this crisis. So for me, I think leaving everything behind was a risk, right? In the sense of, would I have work to come back to? But I realized that I was surviving, I wasn't living, and I needed to figure out how to live, because I could not keep going in the way that I was going. And so I think that when you see people make radical decisions like the one that I made, it was coming from a place of like, the alternative was no longer a choice.
Wow. Yes. So burnout just doesn't happen. Like, we don't just wake up one day and we're burned out. There are signs and symptoms and warnings that we, are missing somehow. We're not picking up on, or we don't want to acknowledge them. Before the burnout happens, or in your case, before the point where you felt you needed to burn the whole thing down and do like a massive reboot. How can we know when it's time for a break instead of, to prevent the full burnout?
I think if you are listening to this podcast and asking yourself that question, you're probably already overdue for a break. So I think that a lot of us know, and it's inconvenient to know, right? The way we frame it is like, if I can just get through this time period, if I can just get through, I just need to get my kids, into kindergarten. And once my kids get into kindergarten, then I'll figure it all out. Or I just need to make partner. And once I make partner, then it'll all, well, guess what? Every time you reach that milestone, the goalposts move a little further, because life is not inherently peaceful or easy. And so what it is about learning how to do is learning how not to create peace in this chaos, right? Not like, I'm going to retreat from life and I'm just going to be Zen and I'm going to be a Buddhist monk and living in a monastery. I mean, you can do that, right? But if you want to stay in the world, if you want to stay with your family, stay with your job, it's about learning how to regulate your nervous system. A regulated nervous system isn't a peaceful nervous system. A regulated nervous system is a nervous system that can move in and out of states of stress and rest with ease. So, yeah, there are going to be moments when you will need to activate in order to meet the obstacles and challenges of your life. But you cannot stay activated forever. And so it's about finding the balance of when you can step back and when you can step forward, right? And that's ultimately the skill set that is going to get you through the long haul.
I love it. And as we move on through our conversation, I want to hear more from you because I know you are a trauma-informed meditation teacher. For now, would you take us a little bit through what it was like then for you to decide? I don't know if you had sublet an apartment or what you do, and you tell your family, I'm leaving. Like, I'm going to travel the world. Oh, see you in a year or 5 years. Or how did you decide what to do, where you were going to go? How did you decide how much time to take or any of the things, the practical things?
Yes. So I basically had not decided pretty much anything other than that I wanted to see the world. And I did, before I decided to see the world, go back to working with my therapist briefly to make sure that I was going into it with intention. And she was like, okay, you're going to see the world and you're going to heal. And I was like, well, I'm going to see the world, I'm going to heal. Like, I did not believe that I was going to heal. I thought that would be nice, but I was really just focused on making the most of like whatever life I had left. And so I'm, wrapped up my work, moved all my stuff out of my apartment, and I made a spreadsheet actually of all of the things in the world that I wanted to see, like kind of a bucket list. And then I like organized it by like where they were. I like ranked the places like between like 1 to 4. Organized it by like where they were. I know. It was actually embarrassing, but and then I figured out where the most ones were in the world, and that happened to be Africa. So I was like, I guess we're backpacking Africa. Talk about like a not calming first choice. And so I did that. So I left everything behind. I backpacked Africa for about 5 months. And as I was wrapping up things in Africa, there was this knowing that I needed to slow down. I was like, and I wrote this in my journal. I was like, I've done a lot of seeing the world, but I haven't done a lot of healing. And I think that that's what I need in my next chapter. And so now I share this story. I have this newsletter, Adventure to Awaken. You can go to adventuretoawaken.com. And I've chronicled the journey of backpacking Africa and getting to that point where I realized that there was so much I had seen, and yet I was still showing up as me, as this chaotic internal being moving through the world and wanting something more. And I didn't really know what that was, but for me, what it ended up looking like was finding a meditation retreat center where I volunteered and then started studying on my own and learning meditation and coming back into awareness of my body. Because, when we overwork and in a way, the way that I traveled through Africa was another expression of overwork. Like, I had all these sites that I wanted to see, and I was moving from place to place and checking them off of my spreadsheet, my literal spreadsheet. That is a state of flight. When we think about fight, flight, fawn, freeze, the 4 sort of F's of nervous system dysregulation, the parasympathetic activated states. It's also dissociation, because we're focusing on the thing external as opposed to the thing internal. And so I almost had to swing completely in one direction to then be able to swing completely in the opposite direction. And this is something I'm going to write about in the next 2 weeks. But this idea that we have to give ourselves permission to rest, like I had to earn rest somehow in order to be,
It's very Puritan.
Exactly. And so for me, that's what ultimately helped set me on this healing journey, was awareness of my body. And it's very different from, I think, how a lot of people teach meditation, or how a lot of people think about meditation. They think about going to these other, ethereal realms, leaving the experience of being human behind. But that's not trauma-informed meditation, which is what I've now trained in and what I now teach. I got certified as a meditation teacher, but also as a trauma-informed coach, because the way in which I healed was inherently an embodied experience. And that's, I think, what a lot of people who live in the real world need, is a meditation practice that helps them become more present to the experience of their life, how it feels in their body, and how they're showing up with their loved ones.
Hey, I have a couple questions. So,
yeah,
was the meditation retreat or instruction center that you ended up at, was that in the United States or was that somewhere else?
That actually was in Australia. Yeah.
Nice.
So after Africa, I wound up going to Australia, New Zealand, and Bali. And those 3 locations, so I had done about 5 months in Africa, and then I did about 6, actually maybe about 8 months, I would say, because it was 3, 3, and 2. Yeah. So about 8 months moving through Australia, New Zealand, and Bali. And those 8 months were like the bulk of my healing journey, like where the healing took place.
Beautiful. Wow. And the other question I wonder about, working with people who have experienced trauma, how do you help them, I don't know, relax enough? How are you able to work with them on meditation without reactivating them? And I'll say most of my work is with clients who are recovering from religious trauma, and some of them have been in high demand cults and religious groups that required chanting and stuff like that, and so it can be kind of an extra challenge for them if they are being encouraged to meditate. So I know you can't give away all your trade secrets, but is there anything you could offer for anyone who's listening today who might find themselves in that situation? They want to meditate, but they don't know how to do it without being activated.
Yes, I think it is crucial. If you've been diagnosed with trauma, I was diagnosed in 2016 with complex PTSD. So I would say that if you suspect that you may have trauma, I do think it's important to seek out a diagnosis and work with a therapist first and foremost, a trauma aware or informed or trained therapist in particular, because I have also had the experience of working with someone who very much understood what it is like to live in a body of trauma. And I've also worked with a therapist who was not trained in that at all. And it can be re-triggering just even in that capacity. But so that's step one, is if you think that you are struggling with trauma, please seek out a medical professional first and foremost. But then learning the skills of meditation from someone who is trauma informed is going to be very, very different from the experience of learning meditation from just anyone or any religious practice, right? Because meditation does have its roots in religion. And that's not to say that there is a wrong way, but the way that I was trained and the approach that I take is that everybody can be met with a different practice that works for them. And so not every meditation teacher, I think a lot of meditation teachers have their tradition that they teach. Like, well, this is the style that I teach. This is the meditation style that I think works best. But for me, I say, I am going to help you. I'm going to work one-on-one with you to help you find the style that works for you and your body.
How do they know when it's working? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no, you've got it. So it's like, how do you know when it's working? So that's the thing, right? Is that a lot of meditation practices emphasize like, you just have to keep going, push through the discomfort, keep going, push through it. And then like, it'll work. I don't teach that at all. I think that it is about finding confidence within yourself to know that this is the practice that is serving you. So helping you find and hear your inner voice and coming into confidence that you know how to take care of yourself and you know what's best for you. So in terms of working with people who have trauma, it's about growing the capacity to be with whatever comes up. So things are going to come up, right? And this isn't unique to people who have trauma, right? Life is inherently painful. The Buddhists even say this, life is suffering, right? And meditation is about learning how to be with that suffering, but in a way that then serves you. So if it's too activating, then we take a step back. We learn how to work up to being with it, because the more that you can be with it in meditation, the more that you can be with the pain of life itself. And so, these are just some of the things that we work through together. But ultimately, it's not about dissociating, because that's what it looks like, I think, for a lot of people. They're like, well, I tried meditation, but I'm just turning off. I'm just leaving my body. Like I feel the pain and I'm leaving. If that's happening, it's too much too soon. We slow down, work our way up to it, because I want you to be able to meet the challenges in your life without running away from them, which is what ultimately trauma for most people looks like.
Yes. And even you're saying these things and they sound so good. And then there's that part of me that is so much still in the capitalist kind of mindset, or whatever, the performance oriented. And it just makes me chuckle, because I work regularly with clients who struggle with self-compassion and who are also stuck on this treadmill of performance. And they have guilt and shame residual from religious trauma. And they say to me, well, I used to practice meditation. I used to be able to do it for 20 minutes a day, and I just need to get that back again. And that sounds still so much like being back on the treadmill of performance kind of stuff. And do you see that with clients? Do you see clients kind of leaning into that, or do you see that loosening up for them as they really begin to kind of embody the changes that meditation can bring?
Look, I see this with myself, if I'm being honest. I am absolutely a perfectionist and somebody who struggles with self-compassion. I think that for me and for clients who struggle with this, it is a different prescription. In a way, I like to almost liken this to being a doctor. Not every why are there 10 different antidepressants on the market? Because different people need a different prescription. And that, I think, ultimately is what this meditation practice is. It then becomes, okay, we're not trying to achieve anything. Like, I don't care if you meditate for, I think mine was 869 days in a row was my record. What I care about is, did you feel good in your body? Let's make the thing to achieve a state of being And once it starts to become about, well, I need to sit on the cushion and I need to remove the thoughts. Well, now we're no longer meditating, right? We're no longer in alignment with our body. And I mean, for me, ultimately, like, I see the effects of a good meditation practice, not in the quality, whatever I think is the quality of the 20 minutes I've spent meditating. I see it in the effects that it carries out into the rest of my life. And so some of it, I think, too, is about reframing where we're looking for the performance. Stop looking for it on the cushion and just start noticing, how does the rest of your day feel?
Wow. And then, I mean, I imagine it will kind of have an impact in so many areas of life, even such that maybe a person is less activated when they're stuck in a traffic jam, because they have the tools then, whether it's their breathing or whatever it is, to help keep their blood pressure low while they're in that circumstance. Those things seem like they'd be very handy. And also, going through my mind right now, I'm thinking of how so much of social media is designed to make us unhappy about ourselves. It's like the whole advertising thing, right? We're going to create the need. I got my air quotes going, and then we're going to sell you the solution. And I think it can be very challenging for people, and I'm putting myself in this equation too. I have to spend a certain amount of time on social media as an entrepreneur, as someone who owns my own business. But the people I see reflected back to me are younger and skinnier and whatever than I am, and it seems like maybe a practice that would be helpful for me, or a gift to myself, would really be focusing on loving myself and what's lovable about me, and those sorts of things. So I don't know if that's how you do a meditation, or if you give people things to meditate about, or you're just really working on how does the body feel. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. Really, it's about, what do you feel like you need in your life? And then let's work on cultivating that together through a meditation practice. It's so fun. I mean, so much of what you said resonates so much with me. I also am struggling with, what is my relationship with social media, given that, as somebody who loves to tell stories and who loves the experience of being human and sharing that and inspiring people to feel more alive, social media is the main platform where we do those things now. And so this idea of not enoughness is built not only into social media, but into the capitalist system. The idea of enough, of being enough, of having enough, is a rebellion against capitalism, because capitalism does not function if everybody thinks that they have enough. So
I'm just letting that sink in, because I think it's so true. And one of the part of the space that you occupy, or that you're in with social media, is then the wellness space, because your work is about helping people to be well. And we know that sometimes the wellness space can bypass issues like privilege and power and trauma. So a question that I have written down here: how do you keep your work grounded in things like justice and humanity when that's not necessarily what's being focused on in that space?
yes. So, I mean, look, this idea that the answers are outside of you is something that we sell in religion. We sell it in the family system, the idea that mommy and daddy know best. We sell it at work. Listen to your superiors, do what they tell you to do. And it's even sold in the wellness spaces. This guru, this person who's further down the path, listen to them. They have the answers for you. I don't have the answers for you. I am going to help you find the answers for yourself. And I think that that is inherently dismantling of the way in which wellness and all these other systems in our lives are dealt with. So I try to meet every individual where they are. I see them, I find out their story. So part of my practice is about, I don't just come in and here's a meditation I'm delivering to you. We get to know each other, and I help you figure out what you need. And I point you in that direction and give you the tools to go and stand in your power. Because ultimately, I think a lot of people look at wellness as like, I just need a break. But what wellness really should be giving you is the energy to then go and fight the systems, like to engage in the rebellion in society, right? Otherwise, going back to the beginning of our conversation, we then feel that burnout. Because we're giving ourselves so much, but we're not filling our own cup. So what does that actually even mean? What does that look like? Helping you find those answers. And I do want to go back to something you were saying about this whole self-love thing, right? And this idea that like that maybe we just need to focus on what do we love about ourselves. I think for long-lasting wellness, I think that just focusing on what do we need to love about ourselves is its own form of bypassing. So in order to unwrite sort of that bypassing, we have to honor the feeling that is there that we are not lovable, or that there is something that we don't like about ourselves, or that we would like to change. And so a lot of the practice that I do with people is to give the microphone for a moment to those voices, hear what it is they're having to say, and then deciding, okay, what do I want to do with that information? Maybe those voices are pointing us in a direction that we do need to change. Or maybe those voices aren't ours. Maybe those voices are the bully in middle school or our critical mother. And maybe we get to choose to say, I hear you. I hear that you are trying to protect me, and I'm going to make a different choice. I mean, these are just two possibilities, but a lot of this is about learning to be with that discomfort and bringing in the extra self-love that we also need to balance out our lives.
So beautiful. I think the things that you're saying sound so healthy, and they are resonating with me. I'm wondering, how long were you away altogether when you did your big trip? Were you gone for like 2 years, or and then what happened when you came back?
I wound up traveling for about 15 months. And when I came back, things had massively shifted for me. So to go back to the health piece of it, the last time that I went to the hospital for a procedure or a test was about a month before I left. That was in May of 2022. And between May of 2022 and today, I haven't been back to the hospital for inexplicable abdominal pain since.
Mm.
So that was pretty huge for me, that it sort of shifted my way of being, of constantly having to think about what I ate and how it felt in my body. And I no longer that was no longer a present thing for me. Now, I would be lying if I said that I'm like fully healed, right? There are definitely still things that I'm struggling with, but I think that my frame of mind and my approach to them today is very different than it was back then. And so I'm on this journey, as much as I'm like teaching other people, I'm still on this journey as well. Because for me, healing is a choice that I have to make every day to live in alignment with my body and pain and the signals that it is giving me. So, even though I'm a lot better, I'm not 100%, but I'm sharing my story because I think that I learned and discovered so much that, people who are struggling with chronic illness or stress or trauma can learn from. So I wound up spending about 9 months writing a book about the experience. And then I got trained as a trauma-informed coach, and I just completed a meditation teacher training. And so now I'm sort of navigating what life looks like to live in alignment with my soul and my being. I'm currently, as you might be able to see from the greenery in the background, I'm currently in Bali. Bali was one of the places that I visited on my healing journey. I don't know that I'll be here forever, but it's a great place to be right now because I'm in a community of people who I think are living with less. It costs a lot less to live here, which means that you don't have to hustle and earn as much money, to be able to live here, at least as an expat. And I should honor that reality is different for locals, right? And so I think there's, questions that even I struggle with that I have about, even though we're no longer in colonialism, are we in like capitalism colonialism where
Right.
people with more money from Western cultures are basically changing the makeup of these countries simply by being digital nomads and having more spending power. So anyway, these are definitely things and questions I'm grappling with, but I'm here for now. I'm here, learning from both the Balinese and the expat community that is here and figuring out what the next steps are for me, what life is going to look like and how to offer what I've learned to others.
Wow. And even that, writing the book. So I know for myself, because I wrote a book too, very cathartic as well as very challenging. Because boy, that brings up a lot of a lot of painful stuff. And then sharing the wisdom that you have gathered on your own journey, helpful for other people, but also helpful for you, as it is helpful for me. And then the fact that you had places you wanted to see, things that you wanted to see that were your bucket list. And then you kind of went through so intensely your time in Africa and then realized, okay, it's not exactly doing what you purpose that you had hoped that it would be as far as the healing part. And then, and Africa is so ancient. And then you were in Australia again, so ancient. And yes, indigenous people, their indigenous influences, a very different way of life in a lot of communities there than New York or Washington, D.C. So you were not only learning about meditation and these sorts of things, but I imagine you also were learning from people who were indigenous or they were practicing some of their indigenous practices, and that is very different from the way that we typically do things in North America. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think for me, it would be incorrect to say that Western medicine did not help me. I think that my healing journey was a marriage of Western and Eastern medicine.
Yeah.
And I think that really underscores the point I was making earlier of balance, that we are all best served by coming into balance in our nervous systems with the polarities that are inherent to living. When you think about something like grief, for example, within the emotion and feeling of grief is love. It is that you loved something so deeply to be sad that it is gone. And being able to honor all of those polarities of our emotional experience is not dissimilar from being able to honor the polarities of stress and rest and Eastern and Western. And so I think that the problem is that we often come at our problems from one lens when we would benefit from having sort of a mix of what the world and what humanity has to offer. Yes, I mean, in a way, we have all of the answers. Humanity has all of the answers. We've just sort of silenced and tunnel visioned on one approach and said, this is the approach. And so
Right.
It's about really, I think, I mean, and this goes back to really uncovering the wisdom that is within us, but listening to our inner voice and what our bones know, what our DNA carries, and moving forward in a way that feels true and aligned for us.
Beautiful. Wow. Yes, that word alignment comes up with you again and again. And I think it's very important because when we are out of alignment, that's when I think our body really starts to suffer. When we're somehow out of alignment with our values and the work that we are doing. And that's an area, again, where I work with my clients also on values clarification, because the values that their parents insisted and religious communities insisted that they embody might not be the same ones that they embody today. For me, obedience and submission were core values when I was very religious. They don't even make it onto my list now. It's curiosity, agency, autonomy. So figuring out what our values are and living and working according to those values. Is your book available for people? Did you publish it?
It is not published yet. I am in the process of calling in an agent to help me find sort of the right publisher and book deal for the book. But I'm just nodding along with everything you're saying, because healing for me was exactly what you've touched on. It was the whole package: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I think that's sort of the secret sauce, is that, you know, what may present itself as a physical health issue might just actually be the doorway into healing in the total human experience of our lives, right? But thank you for asking. No. So I right now, I mean, if anyone is interested in the book, I encourage you to sign up for my newsletter at adventuretoawaken.com, because that's where I'll be letting people know as soon as the book is out. And that's where I'm sharing the stories that didn't make it into the book for now. So yeah, I do also want to say I have a resource for folks that's free. If you get this resource, you'll also just be signed up for my newsletter. But I think a lot of people are like, where do I start? I think meditation is a very like scary thing to people. It's very like ethereal. And, I want to try to help demystify that as much as I can. But, if you want to work with me, feel free to reach out. I'm on Threads and Instagram at Clara Ritger, or through my newsletter, just reply to any newsletter. But this free resource actually is a 5-day solo retreat. So instead of, you don't have to come all the way to Bali where I am, you don't have to spend $5,000 on this wellness retreat. It's a PDF that has guided meditations, guided yoga practices, guided journaling prompts that you can just do from wherever you are on your own to start to get into the feeling of coming home to yourself. So I hope you'll take advantage of it. And if you use it, let me know how it went for you. For sure. I would love to hear.
Oh, what a lovely gift for you to be giving to people. And give us the website again one more time.
adventure2awaken.com. And hopefully we'll put this in the description as well. If you just go right to the homepage, you'll see a link for the solo retreat guide, but we can get a link in the description of the podcast too.
Oh, this has been such an enjoyable and interesting and inspiring conversation, Clara. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It has been wonderful to speak with you. And I can't wait to hear how everybody's journeys to come home to themselves goes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you, everyone, for tuning in and joining us today on the Sex and Power podcast. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sex and power.